Gurave Namaha. Sri Caitanya Mano Bhishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swabandhantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakantvitam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vanshakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prakarini Nirvisesa Sunyavari Pashtati Shatani. So Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, text 47. Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, and he says, and of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshiping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. So I'm here with Ladini Shakti, Mother Malini, and online we have Lakshmi Priya, Gajendra, Anusura, Damayanti, Garuda, Rachel, and Girija Maha Mantra. Yeah, so this is a lot, like it's a big verse. We could probably spend like 6 months talking about everything in here. It's a lot of nectar, and I have some notes prepared, and we'll really see, we'll see like where this goes. I'm not exactly sure where it'll go, but we'll see, won't we? So yeah, and then I guess I just want to start out like something that Jivan Mukta said last week in class, like in one of his first lectures he ever went to in the temple in Los Angeles. He said that the person leading class said, we're here today by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And if we're here tomorrow, it's by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And if we're here 1 year from now, it's by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And if we're here 10 years from now, it's by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. It's really invoking, yeah, like all those mantras we just chanted and Prabhupada's pranam mantras. It's really to invoke this, this transcendental vibrations, this energy, like invoking this lineage, this parampara, and just sitting here, we get purification, whether we understand what's happening, whether I understand what's coming out of my mouth or not, like we get purification. And then on that line, I'll say anything that's enlightening or enlivening or inspiring is by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and his parampara. Anything that doesn't make sense is me trying to just talk. So that has to be noted. And yeah, so I just want to start like with a little bit of a personal story, and we'll see how it all ties in. Because I love telling stories, and that's why I love so much about this really rich philosophy that we've been given. It's so many stories, so easy to remember, and so easy to relate to. So this is a story. It started before I was born, so it's kind of about, it's important to me because otherwise I wouldn't have been born. 4 years before I was born, in November, and during the month of Kartik, actually, my father was in a plane crash. The flight was a small flight they chartered with 4 other people and a dog, and they were going from the Bahamas to Fort Lauderdale. Like they went on a fishing trip, and on the way back, the engine like cut off, so they had to do a crash landing in the middle of the ocean, And and my dad was like a triathlete, and he always traveled with his gear, like a snorkel mask and fins. So he like, the plane was in the bottom of the ocean, and he like free dove down, got his stuff, whatever. And then this is in 1991, so like technology wasn't like the best. They sent out their like SOS signal or whatever, and they were like, okay, we're just gonna tie ourselves to the plane, and we'll wait the first night, and like someone will come before the morning. And no one came. So they decide, okay, we need to swim. Like, we need to start swimming. And he's with two of his best friends. And they're elder, like a little older. Like, one was just recovering from cancer. And they like, after the first night, like the guy, the names are slipping my mind, but the older gentleman who was like 60, like he started getting delirious. He's like 65 or something. Started getting delirious from like drinking salt water, going through a plane crash in the middle of the ocean alone. Like, he's kind of questioning things. And so he just like took his life jacket off and just like floated down, and like he died. Like, they tried to resuscitate him, everything. And then after this, his wife, like, who was with them, like seeing her husband die of like 50 years, like she also just like gives up, and she dies. So then they're like, okay, we're gonna take the bodies, like we're gonna try to take the bodies for proper burial, whatever. So now at this point, it's my dad, two people, and a dog. And the captain and Del Hicks, the captain of the plane pilot. And then a shark comes. So like this large, like 12-foot tiger shark comes, and my dad's like, he has the mask on, so he can see like the shadow. It's like, this is like morning time. And they're like, okay, we need to let go of the bodies. So they like let go of the bodies, and then they don't see the shark anymore. And then after that, like another traumatic thing is like, they decided they had to kill the dog. Like, they're like, like, we've been in the water over 24 hours. Like, the dog is just like miserable, like just, so whatever, by consensus, like my dad like held the dog underwater and drowned the dog. And then and then they're just swimming, like they're just swimming, like they see that, or they don't even see that, like it's during the day, they don't see land. They're just like, okay, like we saw the beacon in this direction at night, so we're just gonna keep swimming. And then and it was like, there's many little side stories to it, but I'll keep it like as brief as possible. And pretty much then the second night, like they were swimming, and like my dad, my dad tied them to, like they're all tied together. My dad was swimming, he had like the fins, so he was really like pulling them. And then he fell asleep, and they got separated, and he woke up, and he like whistled, like, where are you? And he couldn't find them. So he just said, like, I'm gonna make it, like I need to swim, like this is my only chance, I'm gonna make it to land. And like at this point, like, we there's a saying, I don't know the exact saying, it's like, no one is atheist at the time of death. So like at this point, like you're in the water, like, it's also November, 71 degrees. So like he had a wetsuit, but still it's cold, miserable. You're just swimming, you're exhausted. And he just like started praying, and like connected with that power of prayer. And like started making deals, like I'll stop drinking, like I promise. I'll stop smoking, I'll stop doing drugs, stop gambling. and I can see it, like just like during it was like the third morning, third morning, like the sunrise, like as the light's coming up, like he like hits a sandbar, like he made it, like swim. It ended up being 20 miles, about 20 miles. And he sees a boat, like it's like morning time, and he sees a boat in the distance, like some people doing work, and he like whistles, like just like has his fins up, like, like come. And they had heard about the plane crash. They didn't know what was going on. Like it was like, this was on like national news, like all over the place. And so the boat comes over, and what's interesting is the very first word that comes out of his mouth, it says water. I needed water. I've been in a plane crash. And Rasoham Apsu Kanteya, O son of Kunti, I am the taste of water. That's what we're all seeking. So it's a great story, but the very first thing that he was after was water. And I think maybe we're here today because we're after this spiritual water, this nectar that we're always anxious for as a spirit soul having a human experience. And yeah, so on one level, like my father's story is amazing, and like I'm super grateful. Like it's been a really like inspirational thing, and like really has given me you know, experience, like direct knowledge of like what is possible for any one of us to do. And then like the next verse, so like when I was choosing this verse, the end of chapter 6, I was kind of looking end of chapter 6 and beginning of chapter 7, like that area. And then so a few verses later, 7.3, Manushanam sahasresu kachid yatita sidhaye yatatam api siddhantam kachin mam vete tatvata. And this means out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. A few months ago, so yeah, like they're like this parampara, this lineage is like really like being urgent about like the type of urgency we should have in pursuing Krishna consciousness and in pursuing the purpose of life. Like, what is the purpose of life? Self-realization and service of God. And then I just like wanted to shift gears a little bit and like talk about, so yeah, like one out of many thousands, one will endeavor for self-realization, and out of those who have you know, achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So like, yeah, like my father's story is amazing, and like Prabhupada and like this lineage, like I kind of wanted to just shift gears a little bit to like the stories and like the pastimes that I've heard of these fully self-realized beings, just like for my, like that have really given me a lot of faith in like what they're talking about and what they're teaching. And then kind of giving like a little overview of like where we are today, like the parampara. So, and this will be like a little bit group facilitated. So I have a question for everyone. So why did Caitanya Mahaprabhu incarnate? What got him to come to incarnate? Or online?
Well, he has 5 reasons.
Okay.
3 of them are internal reasons and 2 of them are external reasons. So he wants to experience what is it so cool about Krishna that everyone, and especially Srimati Radharani, loves him so much. And he's a little envious that I have love for Radharani, but she has more love for me, and I want to taste that love. And then there is one more internal reason. Service.
Like the joy she feels.
The joy she feels in the service. And then 2 external reasons, and that's pleases devotees and then transform everyone's heart to also become a devotee.
Exactly. And the reason why I'm going to that about 500 years ago, like this is the beginning, not the most recent beginning of this parampara. I know technically it traces back to Krishna, but just looking over the last 500 years. And then the other reason that I was going after is Sri Advaita Acharya. Like your answers are beautiful, great. Thank you for letting my ears hear that. And the other like kind of pastime I wanted to talk about just briefly was like Sri Advaita Acharya. So Krishna got invited. Sri Advaita Acharya did some prayers invoking the Lord to incarnate, and he did. And this is all referred to in the Vedas as well. And then, then I wanted to like go down a little bit from the lineage. So Bhaktivedaka, who is also on the altar, his story is amazing. I was reading a little bit about him, like as a judge and during British rule, and just like he had 10 kids and he still found time, like so full-time judge, 10 kids, and he still had time to chant all his rounds and to preach Krishna consciousness and like really be a bhakti yogi. And then I'm curious because I heard the pastime, but I want to open it up if someone wants to share about it, about Bhaktivinoda's like prayer for Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. If you guys could, someone online, or do you know what I'm getting at?
Yes. Yeah, you pray for the way of Vishnu.
Yes. You want to share it really quickly? Yeah.
That's all I know. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was feeling despondency that there is not so much he could do. And, you know, like the devotee's mood is to not feel qualified, or the devotee's mood is feel like I'm doing so little. So I want to invoke auspiciousness by bringing someone who are going to represent Krishna and is going to be able to really spread Krishna consciousness all over India, at least, all over the world, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur had the vision of Krishna consciousness being spread all over the world. And he prayed, and he prayed for a ray of Vishnu that, like, that Vishnu incarnate in and I don't think he, you know, he was not like coming from a place like my son, who just wanted to serve the world, and he was feeling so despondent that he prayed for Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He calls it the ray of Vishnu, so we can interpret it whatever way we choose.
Hare Krishna. Yes. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, what I'm understanding, he he wanted to serve more, wanted to do more. And actually, interestingly enough, in Prabhupada's birth year, which I think is 1888, right? Bhaktivinoda Thakur sent out literature on Krishna consciousness to different universities all over the world. Like that was one of the first like books I haven't done too much research, but from my understanding, one of the first like books from India, Parampara, like Teaching and Precept of Lord Chaitanya. Yes. And then, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur like really set this intention, invoked auspiciousness for the real Vishnu, or like Vishnu Tattva, from a representative from the spiritual world to come down and spread Krishna consciousness. And then I won't go too much into it, but it ended up being his son, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who is Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master. And then like just a quick story about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati that like I find is amazing. So I love mangoes. I really I love mangoes. Like in South Florida, like in my neighborhood, there's a bunch of mangoes everywhere, and I remember just like eating unlimited mangoes, and they're delicious, to the point of being sick where I didn't like mangoes anymore. But anyways, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, when he was young, like 3 maybe, he ate a mango that like wasn't offered, so it wasn't prasad, and his father like was stern with him, was like hey, like that's not okay, like we only like eat food that's offered, like we're endeavoring to be devotees. And like from that day, at 3 years old, he made a vow to never take mango his whole life. And he's stuck to that vow. And that's amazing. That's like one in a million, 1 in a billion. And then Srila Prabhupada, 1 in a billion, again, coming on the ship, receiving the instructions from the spiritual master to preach Krishna consciousness in the West, because he spoke good English, to translate the books, and coming with $7 worth of rupees, landing in New York. And within how many years? Like within 5 years, there's like 108 temples all over the world. Something like that. But so someone, Srila Prabhupada coming with nothing, but just with this mission given to him by a spiritual master, no money, and just the books he translated, some rupees, and within a decade, 5 to 10 years, like Krishna consciousness was spread all over the world, 100 temples, thousands of people endeavoring, many classes in the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam. And then just like the point to be made that there's over 600 translations of the Bhagavad Gita in English. And like people are, okay, why do you do this one? And I mean, it's just historic fact that like this version, Bhagavad Gita as it is, by Srila Prabhupada, had the most influence compared to any other Gita. So like that's personally why I trust that this is the authority. It's certainly, I've read another version of the Bhagavad Gita, and this one has certainly had a way more profound impact than anything else. And then, yeah, I'll shift gears a little bit. So yeah, like what is the Bhagavad Gita teaching? And it's teaching the process to understand Bhagavan. I was listening to a lecture and Srila Prabhupada was saying that like this Krishna consciousness movement, this like self-realization movement means to try to understand what is Bhagavan, the supreme personality of Godhead. And then he's like, okay, what is that process? And like in Bhagavad Gita, the process is being described by Lord Krishna himself, by Bhagavan himself. Bhagavan Uvacha, many verses start with that. Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Lord said. And this is from 7.1. Mai astaka mana parta yogam yugna mat asrahya asam saya samagram mam yata yanyasi tachuru. My dear Arjuna, now I shall explain to you. You hear with attention. Okay, now hear, O son of Partha, how by practicing yoga and full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubts. So what I'm taking from that, and what Prabhupada was taking from that, is saying that like attach yourself to Krishna, increase your attachment to Krishna, increase your attachment to this disciplic succession, and to the teachings and the rules and regulations of this disciplic succession, of this parampara. And like, right, we all have a propensity to be attached to things. Like we all like whatever. Yeah, I'll touch a little bit on this later in a bit, but it's like we're in one sense we're creatures of habits, and like we're attached to our habits. So like we're just like doing and doing and doing. Like I think it's like 60% of our day is kind of on autopilot, and we all have a propensity to be attached to, you know, things that give us pleasure. Like we're all seeking pleasure. And yeah, I'm just like recalling this story that I've heard from dear Govinda, where like a long time ago there was a king who told his sons to seek that pleasure which withstands the test of time. And I don't have the Sanskrit verse, but in it he says, yeah, like don't seek, you know, the pleasure for the stool eaters, for the pigs and the dogs. Seek the pleasure which withstands the test of time. And I'll just make like a distinction that like really helped me out. It's like this distinction between matter and spirit, right? It's so obvious we're spirit. You know, chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, you know, the soul continually passes from youth to childhood to old age, and then passes on afterwards, after death. We're always changing bodies. So we are a spiritual entity. We are this eternal entity. And then the difference between spirit and matter, spirit is that which is eternal, matter is impermanent. So what gives us, the only thing that gives us as spiritual beings like happiness or pleasure or satisfaction is things that are also eternal, or things that are also, things that are also eternal. Like we have to match up with our eternal nature to experience. So it's like attach ourselves to that which is eternal. So the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna and his name are non-different. Krishna and his form are non-different, right? So if I'm thirsty and I say water, 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 I'll still be thirsty. But if I'm spiritually thirsty or spiritually hungry, if I'm seeking pleasure and fulfillment that something eternal can give me, that Sri Krishna can give me, that he's one with his name. So I can chant his name, or I can hear stories about his pastimes, or I can associate with what he's saying through the Bhagavad Gita, through Srila Prabhupada. And yeah, like, and then, okay. Now shifting gears a little bit. So it's like more like, what is the process? Like, what should I do? Like, okay, maybe now I'm feeling this spark, like this like natural inclination to walk self-realization. Like we showed up here today. We can be anywhere else in the world, but we're spending our Saturday morning discussing Bhagavad Gita. So we clearly have some interest towards this. And then like more and more like, okay, what is the process, right? So I was reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the purport 1.19, the secret of success in spiritual life is in satisfying the spiritual master, and thereby getting his sincere blessings. And then we sing this every morning. I just want to sing the last two verses. We can sing it together, the Guru Vastakam. Sakshadaritvena samasta sasti utastata bhavyate visabdi. Kintu praborya priya evatasya vande guru Sri Chanana Vrindam. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado yasya prasada yayam stuvam stasya yasya trisannam vande guru Sri Chanana Vrindam. Vande Guru Sri Charana Vrindam. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Yeah, and then I'll just like read those verses. I find them really profound. So text 7. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hari. Yeah, like without the spiritual master, we would have no way of connecting with God. So yeah, it's saying like we should honor the spiritual master, respect the spiritual master as much as the Supreme Lord. And then text 8, Yasya Prasada. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master. And then, yeah, so like this is a bona fide spiritual tradition. I'm not saying like this is the only way, but this is a bona fide spiritual tradition. So I'm endeavoring to follow the rules and regulations. And yeah, so the rules and regulations of this, process that Srila Prabhupada is giving to us. It's to chant the holy names. It's to, mantra meditation with the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then Krishna Katha. So it's like step 1 is kind of controlling our tongue. Chant through chanting, and then Katha. So speaking subjects that are actually, that are non-violent and that are supportive of the self, turning towards the self in a process of self-realization. And then I'll bring up like the 4 regulations. What are the 4 regulations? Online, what are the 4 regulations?
No meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex.
Jai. So yeah, I last week Mother Malini gave a really good or facilitated a nice discussion around gambling, and I would like you. I was sleeping in class, so I'd like if you could just say like a sentence or 2 about what you're speaking about like the regulation of gambling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first I want to say that for many years I made that vow. And I was thinking, oh, that's easy. I never gambled in my life, so easy one. That's one easy one to do. So I just have 3 to take care of. And then the meat eating wasn't so difficult either. Anyway, and so none of them were very difficult, but that one never bothered me because I never gambled. However, I know that there is deeper meaning to everything Srila Prabhupada gives us, so many layers. And of course, we want to, it's like valid to see that layer of directly gambling. And then there is so many layers, like any speculation can be gambling, speculation is money, anything. And also like looking at how we are gambling by betting on this is what going to give me happiness. Like I'm gambling, like, okay, if I have a nice spouse, if I have a nice bank account, if I have I'm betting. I don't know it's going to give me happiness. So it is a gamble. And then that's what we do all the time. We gamble away our life to what we think is going to give us happiness. So it's like we imagine something is going to give a return. So we imagine when we gamble, that's what we do. We imagine that, okay, if I take that lottery ticket, if I take, if I vote, whatever, 3 black or something, I'm going to make $1 million. So similarly, if I make plan to have all those things, have degrees, and I'm going to be happy. It's the same thing, it's gambling. And then Srila Prabhupada, I heard that, and Dear Govinda was reminding us of that too, is that Krishna consciousness is also a gamble, not from the perspective of Krishna, not from the perspective of the spiritual master, but from the perspective of the conditioned soul. It's like at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada tells us, at least theoretically, accepts that Krishna is who he's saying he is in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna said, like that. So at least theoretically, that means a gamble too. To at least theoretically means like, okay, I'm going to accept something I'm not sure about, but still I'm going to spend time reading that book. Still I'm going to spend time, energy to invest in that practice of Krishna consciousness. However, from the point of view of the spiritual master, the line of disciplic succession and Krishna, this is not gambling. This is real life. This is like, no, I'm not putting energy out to something that I don't know will get a result. For a devotee who know Krishna, for the one who have completely trust and faith in God's mercy, this is the only place to invest and to have a full multiplied dividend, that you call, like when you get back way more, like we give a little bit to Krishna, like let's say we give that to Krishna give us back the full harm. So that's how that gamble is bringing back a result.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yeah, so gambling, like not taking it, it's funny because I also was like, oh, I don't gamble. Like I don't go, you think gambling's like, I don't go to the casino. Yeah.
It is gambling.
It is. Oh, that is also gambling. Yes. Yeah, of course. And yeah, like taking this into a broader context, like, okay, like how am I gambling my time? And like, it's like we from our, eternally conditioned, eternally, like connected and like engrossed in material nature, like we are gambling, like even with Krishna consciousness. Like I like that you said that, like we're choosing, where am I putting like time? This is like the most valuable thing. I do want to talk about time. So it's like, this is our most valuable thing that we have, right? Is time. So it's like, where are we putting our time? Where are we putting our energy? And as Mother Malini was just saying, like, okay, like Krishna consciousness from our perspective, this is a gamble. Like we're not 100% realized. We don't understand like what exactly is happening. And so it's a gamble for us to do these practices and to see what happens. And then, yeah, like Srila Prabhupada recommends, like for approaching this text is to, at least in theory, accept that it's true, accept that everything that is being shared is beneficial for our process of self-realization. And then, talking a little bit about like trusting the spiritual master, and like it can be easy to be cynical. Like there's things that may seem contradictory, like the whole chapter. Devin on Wednesday was talking a bit about the introduction, Bhakta Devin, the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, and like why Arjuna is the ideal student. So Arjuna is trusting Krishna. He's not like being cynical. Like if something doesn't make sense, he's not like, oh, you're not making any sense. I'm just going to do my own thing. Like, you're not a real guru. You're not a real teacher, Krishna. Like, he's like, Arjuna is this like taking this mood, like, okay, like, I don't understand. Like, here's my doubts. Like, please tell me. And like, it's said again and again, like the more that we hear and the more that we, sattva, meaning of sattva is what comes to the surface. So doubts, my understanding is doubts are always going to come to the surface. And it's important for us to like share in confidence, what our doubts are, to ask questions. And then just by hearing and by reading and by studying, like our doubts apparently become cleared. So it's just the process. And then, yeah, I like wanted to talk a little bit about time. And so, yeah, like we're eternal beings, and like one of the regulations, like we'll talk a bit about sex. So sex is like the highest pleasure, like that we can apparently experience. Like I remember growing up, that was the goal and purpose of life, like as a young boy, was sex. And that was like, yeah, that was it. That was the best thing. And then Prabhupada like talks about like, well, yeah, like you can only have sex for a few minutes, or like you can't like have sex 24/7. And I was like thinking about this, and it's like, okay, because we're eternal beings, like only things that are of the eternal nature can actually satisfy us. So like sex would never give us pleasure or satisfaction that we're hankering, that we're seeking after, because we can't do it 24/7. So it's like what, and you can apply that to anything, like what, eating, like I can't eat 24/7. So like, therefore, like that's not gonna give me true fulfillment and spiritual satisfaction. The only thing that can give me fulfillment and satisfaction has to be eternal. And then it's like, what is eternal? It's like, you can go chanting 24/7. You can go reading, talking about Hari Katha 24/7. You can practice Krishna consciousness 24/7. And if we want to be that 1 in a billion person, like that's what we have to do. And Prabhupada would always say, what is the difficulty? Like these subjects, my experience, these subjects are far more intellectually, mentally stimulating and, gratifying is the right word, just like fulfilling. Like these subjects are way better than talking about like sports, like talking about like who won the Super Bowl, which I don't know who won Super Bowl this year. And like this just, yeah. And then like the process of eating, right? So instead of eating, eating the results of gross violence, like the meat industry, we're going to take, a very clean, sattvic vegetarian diet, and we're going to offer it to the Lord. We're going to transform it into spiritualize our food. And then, so that's association. And then, singing and dancing. We all have a propensity to sing and dance. Let's transform that to spiritual singing and dancing. Singing, there's many bona fide mantras and songs from the acharyas that like we can learn and we can practice, and we can carry it with us, forever. These songs that possess transcendental wisdom. And then, yeah, so just like really like endeavoring like for our whole life to become Krishna conscious to the best of our ability. And then, yeah, I actually had one, I had one other thing that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so it was so we're in Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and the age of like degradation. And in the first canto, first chapter, there was a purport that was just describing like the situation that we're in right now as spirit souls, having this human experience in Kali Yuga. It's like, we're lazy. What else are we? Like we're lazy, like dirty. We're lazy. We're dirty. Unintelligent. No memory. Short memory. Yeah. Short life.
Triggered by everything.
Triggered by everything. Yes. Damayanti.
Garuda says ignorant.
Ignorant, yes. Okay, so these are all qualities.
We can fight over trifle.
We can fight over trifle, over small trifles. We're always disturbed, always anxious. Anything else that we experience in Kali Yuga? But one thing I wanted to highlight is Prabhupada mentioned, like, I'll have to look at it in the purport. He was like talking about habits. And I just like I'm really like my work, like my personal career and work, like as like a yoga health coach, like I really look at habits and like transforming. I'm kind of obsessed with like transforming habits. And that's what we're doing like with Krishna consciousness as well. We're transforming mundane material habits into Krishna conscious spiritual habits. And really like it's very simple, like because this is a higher taste, like according to the acharyas, this is a higher taste. So it's like this is what our soul is always hankering after, like this, like reading Bhagavad Gita and reading Srimad Bhagavatam and associating with devotees and having Hari Katha, doing kirtan and eating prasad. Like this is what our souls are always hankering after. So it's like when we give it, when we give it to ourselves, we experience that. And I just want to talk a little bit about, like, briefly about habit setting. It's like wherever we're at, like we can always endeavor to take the next step. Like every day we can endeavor to go a step deeper into our process of Krishna consciousness. And like, I mean, an example like that I read actually in The Power of Bhakti, like by Garuda, in the introduction, you said like you started, chanting 1 round and then you added 2 rounds. And then, I forgot your time period, but it was like a beautiful example of how we can, use like habits, like habit hacking to like take the next step in any area of our life. But like specifically today, talking about Krishna consciousness. So, if I wanted to read more, like I'll start by reading 1 minute a day. If I wanted to, eat better food, I'll learn 1 new recipe a month. Very simple, very simple. If I wanted to bring more music into my life, I'll start with 1 song, every 3 months or something, like really focus. I'm going to learn this 1 song by Narottam Das Thakur, etc. And yeah, just like being really pragmatic and practical about like the process that is given to us, and like really like, with ourselves, like as in we are the expert of our lives, and we can make a decision of how we can give more to this process, whether it doesn't necessarily have to be more time. Like we could say our time's booked, but we can say, okay, I'm going to do japa for 30 minutes, but these 30 minutes, I'm going to set myself up so I can be 100% present and engaged to the best of my ability. And I'm feeling pretty nice with all that. And I would just like to open up the floor for any discussion or comments. Thank you so much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Good morning. Thank you for the class, Nico. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the class, kind of walking through kind of a timeline of, this practice that we're all like giving ourselves to. And yeah, I just appreciate having that overview today. It was really refreshing to kind of be with that experience. I was really connecting to like attachment. And I've heard Srila Prabhupada say that directly, like just try to become attached. And through these habits, you're, acknowledging and bringing to light, habits that we do, and we could start to change. And looking at like, my experience with attachment with this practice, like the more time passed with my giving myself to this practice, I'm experiencing that now, an attachment more and more. So I just really kind of like can really relate to that, and really kind of like just, I don't know, I feel like it's, it's just something like really, really like tangible that I can like, look at, like I have an attachment, whereas where I didn't before. And looking at like, just throughout my life being attached to things that weren't necessarily healthy for me, and or connecting to my authentic true self. So yeah, I guess that's what I mainly want to kind of highlight is my experience with attachment. And then also looking at like, I like just bringing to light, like, where could I stretch myself now? What new habits could I, take on to develop more attachment? So thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Yes, thank you for bringing that back up, attachment. And it's a beautiful question to live in, to inquire, like what habits can I create, or what decisions can I make? What distinctions can I make that make me more attached to this process. Yes, Lydia.
I appreciated your class, Nico, very much. I love classes with questions. I don't like classes with questions when I'm not allowed to respond. And yeah, I love the story of your father. It's such a traumatizing story. Like I'm like imagining, it's like still quite something for him. But like I was like, when you were speaking, I was like envisioning your daddy praying to the Lord and like, I give you everything, and now Krishna is taking his son. That's what I was thinking. And yes, I was praying like that too, and I was at primary school. I grew up in atheistic family, but anytime there was a test, I was praying for good grades. And I was praying, I promise I will pray every day if I get a good grade. And then I was never praying, and I feel like, and now Krishna is like taking what I promised. And yeah, and then for regulative principles, I want to add to that like all of them, like the rules that Prabhupada gives us is really like the grossest, like the grossest violation of the actual principle. So for example, non-violence. So the grossest violation is eating meat, but then there is so many like subtle levels. Like you said, like violence is speaking about us than Krishna. Or the gambling. So the grossest is like, okay, going to casino. But then like any thoughts, like anytime I'm thinking something else than Krishna is gambling, because if I leave my body now, it's my destination. Or yeah, illicit sex. So it's like a cleanliness principle. So it's like are the thoughts clean? And the last of like adoration, distinction, my intentions, and intoxication. Again, like the grossest is, getting drugs, but then being intoxicated with, again, like anger, for example. So anyway, they all have, and I feel very inspired to, well, not inspired, I like my longing, like when you were speaking about Prabhupada, my longing to serve him, like appeared for a moment. And so thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and I'm happy that you got the experience of your desire to serve Srila Prabhupada, and I'm resonating with your like what we hear about the 4 regulations. Like that's the grossest level, like the most easy example. But then there's so many subtleties behind all of those 4. And then another thing you said about like praying, praying in elementary school, like praying for a good grade. And what's coming up is like this, like my relationship with prayer, our relationship with prayer, and like how the mood, of the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. The mood is just, please engage me in devotional service and cause us devotional service. So it's a beautiful prayer. It's not give and take.
Give me a good grade.
Yeah. Yes.
I have a question that's related to the story with your dad, because I felt really like left hanging, like a cliffhanger. Like the 2 friends, the 2 last friends, did they circle around and get rescued, or did they die? I'm sorry, it's not related, but I really felt anxious the whole class to hear.
So my dad was like, he was a captain for many years, and so he understood the tides, and he had a watch on. So he was like, I last saw them, around this time. I swim in this direction. The current's going this way. He's like, they're probably over there, and they found them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Both of them. Yeah.
Wow. So 2 died, the dog died, but
3 survived.
3 survived.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because of your dad.
Because of prayer.
Because of prayer.
Okay, I believe
Thank you
that's,
for your class.
thank you so much.
Enlightening.
I'll conclude with one thing. I heard this in coach training, but I'm gonna bring it to this setting. It's what happens in between morning programs is more important than what happens during the morning program. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you so much for your association and attention. Bye-bye.
Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Bhagavad Gita ki jai.